Hello, Ewok. Hello, guests. Um, Today, I am going to be talking a little bit about, um, I'll just be telling a little anecdote about where I grew up. Um, for some minor backstory, I was adopted and raised in the state of Michigan. And about a year after I was adopted, my parents adopted another boy. His name was Philip, um, and mine, of course, is Wookie. Um, so, uh, Philip and I got off to a little bit of a rocky start. He he was tenacious, we'll say, uh, and over time, though, we fell into a good rhythm together, and a big part of growing up where we did was that our parents had um, uh, several tens of acres of forest. I'm not really sure exactly what the number was. I think at one point it was 45, then became 75. Anyway, that was in turn surrounded by 150 or 200 acres of state-owned forest. So uh, this meant that it was, for example, a half-mile walk just on my driveway to get to where the bus picked us up. But it also meant that there was so much to explore. So, um, there we go. Around the time that we were, gonna say I was 9 or 10, and he was 8 or 9, being a year younger than I. Our father read the Chronicles of Narnia to us, and we maybe I did more than Philip, but we really engaged with those stories, and so we would go out in the woods and play Narnia. So there was a small creek that ran from a from a spring to our lake, and so we would always you had to hop across the creek in order to get to Narnia, and then you had to pass through this. I think it was a vine of some sort, or part of it was a tree that was bent, and then it was a vine coming out on the other side. But regardless, it made a big arch, and so you had to pass through the arches too. And then when we got there, me being the older brother, I got to have the role of Aslan or Aslan. Not really sure on the pronunciation of that still. Anyway, we'll say Aslan because that's what it sounds like in my head. So I played that role, and he played the role of Fledge from what is that one called? Uh, the one where Polly and Diggory are the main character, the magician's nephew, the winged horse, and basically this playing involved we each had a tree that we would climb and sit in, and mine looked out over this little valley, very little because Michigan's mostly flat, and then his was right behind that, and we would each sit up in our trees, and we assigned these descriptions of what the respective hamadryads, the wood nymphs that were the spirits of the trees, looked like. And we would just sit and tell stories to each other about what was happening at that time. Uh, you know, be it a giant invasion or uh, you know, some variety of magic that was happening. Philip always liked to plant candy that would grow into trees and fly, and that it's funny because there wasn't a whole lot of actual action happening, but to my mind, those were some of the funnest activities I had as a kid. Um, that's the Chronicles of Narnia right there. I can see my head. Anyway, uh, so yeah, I've always really enjoyed looking back on that time, um, because coming into a situation where a stranger is instantaneously your brother, it takes some time to adjust, to get to know each other. And when we found that common ground, we suddenly had a whole world open to us that, despite being a story known and loved by everyone, it took on its own incarnation for us, and only we really know those stories. And I've there are few things that I look back on uh, in that time in my life that give me more of a happy feeling. Uh, One other thing was, if you didn't go through all of those different things, you were just in the woods. And in the woods, there were so the part of Michigan I grew up in used to be uh, massive oak and white pine forest, uh, primarily white pine. And when that was clear cut for the furniture industry, the the stumps were just burnt out. And even though it had been nearly 100 years, the shells of those stumps were still there. And so we would take those and construct these tiny forts with them and sit in there and tell stories to each other. We were pretty sedentary, but my parents didn't really care as long as we were outside. And then, as we got a little older and we'll call it mischievous, more mischievous, we started to nick things out of the pantry and out of the fridge, and we would, go out and start a fire and try to get embers, and then put hot dogs on the embers and cover them up and try and get them to cook that way. And that was always fun too, because then it was a different story where we were these old settlers who, older and younger brother who had come to this new place, and just using what we had around us had made our camp, and were living off the land. Really excessively finger quoting today, not sure why. Anyway, it was our passion to engage in imagination, to make everything around us somehow magical and different from what it was, which was pretty magical in and of itself. So, in that respect particularly, we were exceptionally blessed. And I'm always happy and grateful when I look back on that. Just one last little thing about the woods. There was a tree that had fallen, but it didn't fall all of the way, and it was still partially alive. I think it might have gotten hit by lightning or something. And so it had collapsed, but all of the fibers were still connected. And so we called it the bouncy tree because you could go and stand on it and bounce up and down. Um, Once it really got moving, you got about 4 feet, and that was our trampoline, essentially. Really, really nice, fun time. Um, so, yeah, that's it today. I just wanted to tell a story because it's been on my mind a little bit. The Ewok was interested in hearing about it, and so I thought I'd share. I hope you enjoyed. Um, I'll switch sign-offs here and use one more appropriate to that time in my life, being Garrison Keeler's "Be well, do good work, and keep in touch." Take care. Bye.